Hello and welcome to the Select Board meeting for Monday, June 16th, 2025. My name is Jackie Gilfus and I will be your acting chair for this evening while Select Person Schneider is out. This evening, I ask that when you address me, rather than using Mr. Chair or Madam Chair, that you use either Chair, Chairperson, Chair Gilfus, or Honorable Chairperson, as was recommended by a resident, or perhaps Your Chairness, as recommended by Select Person Eldridge. The following meeting is being recorded and broadcast by Tyngsborough Media. The meeting is available on our local cable access channels on Xfinity and Verizon Fios, and as a live stream on our website, tyngsboroughma.gov. A recording of this meeting will be available through the video on demand portion of our website. Open meeting laws require that any member of the audience who intends on recording either video or audio so declare that now. Seeing none. After instruction from the State Fire Marshal and the Tyngsborough Fire Chief, in the event of an emergency, there is an exit directly across from me at the rear of the room, as well to my left. And fortunately, the entire fire department is here with us right now. At this time, I invite all of those who are willing and able to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And let's start with board introductions at my left.
Good evening, Jacqueline Schnackers, Executive Assistant.
Good evening, Adele Coughlin.
Good evening, Ron Cohane.
Good evening, Eric Eldridge.
Good evening, Colin Loisel, Town Manager.
Good evening, Sean Walsh, Assistant Town Manager.
Thank you. I am delighted to share that this evening we're going to be conducting a promotional ceremony for one of our Tyngsborough firefighters. So before we begin our regular meeting, I'm going to invite up Assistant Fire Chief Sands, and we're going to conduct a formal promotion. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Mr. Loisel.
Thank you. Assistant Chief Sands is, as you mentioned, here to do a formal promotional ceremony. The board is aware of this promotion. We've talked about it at a previous meeting, but for scheduling reasons, we put the ceremony off for today, so I'll turn it over to Assistant Chief Sands.
Thank you, Select Board, Administration, guests, firefighters, thanks for coming tonight. Today, it's my great honor to recognize a firefighter whose dedication, courage, leadership have all earned him a well-deserved promotion to the rank of lieutenant. Thomas Jeffroy has consistently demonstrated the qualities that define excellence in his profession. Calm under pressure, sharp decision-makings on scene, and a deep commitment to both fireground operations and patient care. Tom was raised in Tyngsborough, educated in the Tyngsborough public school systems, and still resides in Tyngsborough with his wife, Sarah. Tom is a 10-year veteran of the Tyngsborough Fire Department. Tom has a degree in fire science. He is certified to the level of Fire Officer 2. He is a fire instructor, a hazardous material technician, and has just been named to the Fire District 6 hazmat team. He's one who shows up early, mentors newer members, and never backs down from a tough call. When he's not pulling a hose into heavy smoke in a building, stabilizing a critical patient in the back of the ambulance, his skill, integrity, and professionalism are second to none. This department is lucky to have him, and our community is safer because of him. Let's stand and congratulate Tom on his promotion to lieutenant.
I, Thomas Jeffroy,
Do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully and impartially
perform the duties imposed upon me
perform the duties imposed by me
as lieutenant
of the Fire Department
as Lieutenant of the Fire Department
for the town of Tyngsborough
for the town of Tyngsborough
to the best of my knowledge
to the best of my knowledge
and ability,
and ability,
so help me God.
so help me God.
Congratulations, sir.
You can sit. Now I'd like to invite up Tom's wife, Sarah, to officially pin him.
We never had release because they were never held.
All right, thank you for coming, and we're going to go outside, close the doors so you can get your meeting started, and we're going to take some pictures.
Take a group photo?
Oh, absolutely.
Just have them go in front there.
We'll go over there, we'll take a photo. Thank you.
We'll edit that next time.
All right. With that underway, I would like to get into regular session business. Let's go to meeting minutes. Could I get a motion to approve meeting minutes from last meeting?
Chairperson,
Thank you.
I move that we approve the regular session meeting minutes for June 2nd, 2025.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed, abstained? The vote carries 4-0-0. All right. I don't see any citizens that are here to address the select board, so we'll move on to the town manager's report. I don't think we've ever done this so early in the meeting.
I do appreciate it. A prior chair would have bumped me all the way to the bottom. All right. Chief Woods has submitted a grant application to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts through the fiscal year 2026 Municipal Roadway Safety Grant for enhanced traffic enforcement along Middlesex Road. This, of course, is in response to feedback from your last meeting. Middlesex Road is undoubtedly the most traveled road in town and also represents the most crashes. In fact, 37% of the reportable accidents in Tyngsborough last year occurred on Middlesex Road. Last week, School Resource Officer Chris Gustafson hosted Operation Copsicle at Tyngsborough Elementary School. This is an annual program that the Tyngsborough Police Department hosts that brings together future middle school students for ice cream handed out by members of the Tyngsborough Police Department. It is always a great event and very well received. It's just another fantastic example of the work that our robust SRO program here in Tyngsborough does. A big thank you to the Tyngsborough Recreation Department, the Board of Health, the Health Department, Department of Public Works, Police and Fire, and all of our staff that helped plan and execute a fantastic grand opening and health fair at Ironwood Park last week. The weather held out just long enough, the courts were packed, and it was truly a fantastic event. Ironwood is open for business. I drove by yesterday at like 3 in the afternoon, and all of the amenities were absolutely packed. So it's certainly getting its use, which is fantastic. I've done this with the board, but I just wanted to publicly take a moment to acknowledge our first responders, our 911 communication specialists, firefighters, and police officers who handled a very complex and difficult scene a couple weeks ago on Route 3. The accident involved several vehicles, a fatality, and multiple ambulance transports. Despite the very difficult scene, our first responders carried themselves with tremendous professionalism, delivering the highest level of service that you'd expect. I extend my deepest appreciation and admiration to all of them, and of course my condolences to the individual who lost their life, and wish for a speedy recovery for the victims. On a staffing front, we're looking for a part-time cemetery coordinator within the Department of Public Works to help manage the sale of burial plots and coordinate internments. This work was previously handled by the former Cemetery Commission. That was an elected body that was disbanded with the passage of the DPW Act. Former Cemetery Commissioner Doug LaTulip has kindly continued to manage that process during the transition, but has decided to step away from that role. The position is per diem, with up to 19 hours weekly at $20 per hour. The job posting is live currently on tyngsboroughma.gov for those that are interested, and due to the pressing need for this position, we'll be reviewing applications on a rolling basis. So if you know somebody that might be interested, certainly have them reach out. On the project front, the Bicentennial Field Irrigation Project is now in the punch list phase. The system was initiated a few weeks ago, and our project designer has identified a few minor things that need to be ironed out before we close out the project. I expect that we'll be able to close the project out in the next few weeks. They were on site today addressing all but one very minor of the punch list items. And so at some point early next week, we'll coordinate a kickoff meeting with all the staff that will have a hand in managing that project so that they know how to maintain the system. The town convened a scoping meeting last week with S&R Corporation and our project designer at Peer Consulting to review the scope of work for the abatement and demolition of the former COA building at 180 Lakeview Ave. Later this evening, the board will be asked to transfer some money to match the contract value, and assuming a positive vote, we'll be getting work on this project started in the next few weeks. On the procurement front, we're currently seeking sealed bids for the Norris Road Sidewalk project. This project was funded in last year's capital plan and will see the installation of sidewalks from Frost Road to the school campus on Norris Road. We held off doing the construction a year so that the completion of this work will align with the opening of the new middle school instead of trying to do the work while they're still taking heavy equipment in and out of the site. The contract that we have out to bid calls for the work to be completed before school starts on August 26th. Following the approval of this board 2 weeks ago, we're releasing a request for proposals on Wednesday, June 18th for the lease of 120 Westford Road, which is the former recreation building. Proposals will be due by July 16th, 2025 at 10 a.m. Interested parties can obtain the formal RFP documents by visiting the town's website and the bids page. That's tyngsboroughma.gov/bids. Once we receive the proposals, we'll conduct an evaluation of them and share the responses with the board for their review. As a reminder, this is simply an exploration. The town is not committed to following through and issuing a lease. So if we don't get any that are interesting to the town, or if we feel like we have more work to do, we can just reject all the bids. But at least the board will have an idea of what potential interest exists on the site. And then just a few reminders about upcoming events. Join us on Wednesday, June 18th for Bingo Night at the Center for Active Living. Doors open at 5:30 and the game starts promptly at 6:30. On Friday, June 20th, that's this week, we'll host a 10-year anniversary gathering at the Center for Active Living to celebrate 10 years of the Council on Aging operating out of 169 Westford Road. We'll also do a formal naming ceremony to commemorate the name change to the Center for Active Living. That program kicks off promptly at 11. The Tyngsborough Public Library will host a kickoff party for their 2025 summer reading program this Saturday, June 21st, from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the library. You can learn more about the event and their summer reading program by visiting www.tinglib.org.
And then just one update on my end. I'm excited to report that following the meeting last Wednesday of the Commission on Disability, on behalf of the Commission, I submitted to the Massachusetts Office on Disability an application for an ADA improvement grant to update the town's transition plan, which was approved by this board in 2021. If administered, that grant would allow for $17,500 in funding to map all sidewalks and curb ramps throughout the town, incorporate that map into our StreetLogix platform, and provide key data for the town to prioritize any necessary repairs or improvements for our right-of-way infrastructure. We last received this grant from the MOD in 2020 to fund the self-evaluation and transition plan. We expect to hear from them either way this fall. And that's it.
Thank you. Any questions for either the town manager or assistant town manager? Select Person Coughlin, I'll start with you.
None at this time, thank you.
I'd just like to say, the Ironwood Park kickoff was a great event. Since that time, I've been, I go by there quite a bit, and I stop in to see people. I played pickleball, and yesterday, I actually played basketball for the first time in a couple of years. I took a couple people on, a game of one-on-one. So that was a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to playing every amenity that's there. And as Colin said, I've seen people playing so many of those games over there. Every single one, I think I've seen somebody out there. And I've seen a lot of families go there for, just to hang out, spend some time there. The kids, although, a lot of people wanted a playground, the kids seem to be playing a lot of the amenities that are there, and they're pretty young, and they're having a blast. So it's great to see that. One of the things when I moved here, I realized there was never a big park, and I never could figure out exactly how we were going to make it happen, and it's just exciting to see this finally happen. So, please, if you haven't seen the park, please stop in and enjoy it. Thank you.
Thank you. Select Person Eldridge.
Thank you, Chairperson. A couple questions relative to the bicentennial field irrigation. Do we have a smart controller on that one? I meant to ask all
Yes.
this stuff.
Those fields have always had a smart controller. They were broken and never repaired 2 summers ago. My understanding from the school department is that they were repaired last summer.
Okay. And then the other question is, are we at the point with the small number of issues, are we using the new irrigation system today and no longer tapping into potable water for that right now?
I do not believe that we've had to use municipal water. I think a combination of the testing phase where those were on and all the rain that we've received has helped. But certainly, once the system is fully, none of the issues related to actual operation, they were minor things like placement of certain conduits, so they were out of the way. So I have no reason to believe that we weren't.
Okay. Yeah, no, thanks for the update. It's been a long road for that one, and I think it's important for people to understand that not only is it going in, but it's responsible use, and that we're trying to not only not use potable water, drinking water really isn't good for the soil anyway, but we're also, I would hear from people saying, why are the sprinklers on when in the middle of a rainstorm? And now we're, conserving and doing things the right way. So fantastic that we're at that point. So thank you for the update.
Thank you. I'm curious about the Street Logics platform. Do you mind just talking a little bit about that and about how we use it?
Sure.
Or hand it to Colin?
Yeah, Colin's probably the better
Just fake
better
it, what you
resource
know.
there.
StreetLogix is a software that our DPW started using probably 3 years ago now. And what it does is it's an online platform that allows us in real time to see our overall roadway conditions, the network. Once a year, the consultant goes, in fact, actually today I was with our DPW superintendent reviewing this year's report. Based on the projects that we did the year before and a new assessment of all the roads, they update the condition of the road. That's the same software that we use to plan future road projects. And so that's, our superintendent has come in and talked about how it's a combination of where we can get the most money, mixing in roads that are failed while also trying to maintain them. So adding these curb ramps into that will help us incorporate any accessibility work that needs to be done on existing sidewalks while we're planning future years. There is a link on the website to the StreetLogix. I don't know that it's been updated based on the data that we just got today, but it's basically just a map of the town that color codes roads based on their existing condition, and you can drill down to see if that condition has improved. Alternatively, you could drill down and see if the condition has deteriorated.
Why would you?
It's part of our overall pavement management plan.
Great. And it shows where current sidewalks exist and
It
where
doesn't
they...
yet, but it will.
It will as part
Beautiful.
of it. Hopefully,
Great.
we get the funding from MOD.
Great. Thank you so much. All right. Let's get into new business. I think we're going to start with Jackie, right?
So included in your packets this evening is a one-day entertainment and one-day liquor license applications for the Tyngsborough Recreation Annual Block Party to be held on Saturday, August 23rd, 2025 in the Town Center. Both licenses would be valid from 11 a.m. until 9 p.m. Additionally, they are requesting road closure permits for Winslow Road, Kendall Road, and for a lane restriction on Middlesex Road. They are requesting permission to close Winslow Road from the intersection of Middlesex to the intersection of Kendall Road from 7 a.m. on Thursday, August 21st, through 7 a.m. on Monday, August 25th. They are further requesting permission to close Kendall Road on Saturday, August 23rd, from 7 a.m. until 9:30 p.m., and to implement a lane restriction in the right southbound lane on Middlesex Road on Saturday, August 23rd, at 7 a.m. through 9:30 p.m. If the road closures are granted, the Recreation and Parks Committee will be required to coordinate a closure plan with the police, fire, and highway departments. A copy of that plan shall be filed with our office. All food service trucks will be licensed and approved through the Board of Health. Recreation Director Allison Page was supposed to be here this evening, but I think this is pretty self-explanatory. It's something we've done for the last several years. Reviewing the application, our office requested comments from all departments with jurisdiction, and there were no adverse comments. Abutters were notified of this meeting and the road closures.
Thank you. Do I have a motion?
Discussion? I have a question.
Yeah,
Chairperson, if I could ask a question.
you may.
Refresh my memory, but this appears to be the same days and times that we've had, at least from last year.
Yes, it is.
Okay, and given where we were, the complexity of all the things that have gone on during those days, I think it's been pretty smooth. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody was clear that what we're talking about is the same as what we had last year for the road closures, and that there was a lot of folks that were heavily involved in this to ensure both the safety and the logistics and dealing with the traffic. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clear.
Thank you.
Now, are you ready?
No, I don't know. I made note that it was motion second discussion, so now it's discussion, motion second discussion. Any further discussion?
Or questions?
Select person Coughlin, any questions? Any questions?
We've done this many years, and we have it all under control.
I was curious if we are considering maybe for the future moving to Ironwood Park. Obviously, we would change it from not being party at the bridge. Can you speak to that even though Allison's not here?
It has been suggested. There are substantial challenges with doing it at Ironwood, parking being the most prominent.
Yes.
There are, additionally, it abuts two pretty thickly settled residential neighborhoods. And so while the Ironwood grand opening was not as invasive, it was one small musical performance, something of this nature would be we would have to scale back quite dramatically. But it certainly has been a suggestion, but it'll always be Tyngsborough Party by the Bridge.
Great. Thank you. I would like to now entertain a motion.
Chairperson Gilfus, I move that the Select Board approve the one-day entertainment and liquor licenses for Saturday, August 23rd, 2025, from 11 a.m. through 9 p.m., and approve the road closure permits for Winslow Road from 7 a.m. on Thursday, August 22nd, 2025, through 7 a.m. on Monday, August 25th, 2025, for Kendall Road on Saturday, August 23rd, 2025, from 7 a.m. through 9:30 p.m., and to implement a lane restriction in the right southbound lane on Middlesex Road on Saturday, August 23rd, 2025, from 7 a.m. through 9:30 p.m.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? That carries 4-0-0. All right, next up, this one's also Jackie, right?
Included in your packets this evening is an application request from Jonathan Madrigal of the American Diabetes Association regarding the Tour de Cure Road Race, that's the bicycle recreation fundraising event, to be held on Sunday, August 17th, 2025. The starting location is at 10 McGuire Road in Lexington, with a small segment going through Tyngsborough. The race is expected to begin at 7 a.m. and end back in Lexington at approximately 4 p.m. The race is anticipated to go through Tyngsborough approximately 8 a.m. till noon, and the race is expected to have anywhere from 100 to 500 participants. There are no stops in Tyngsborough, and the route will be marked with small coroplast signs attached to utility poles or on stakes, which will be removed after the final cyclist has passed. This event will include medical personnel, bicycle techs, and amateur radio operators. The lead radio operator will be monitoring all emergency radio frequencies in order to redirect the route if necessary. Request has been received by the Highway Department, Police Department, and Fire Departments, and there were no adverse comments. The Police Department will post this information on their website and social media to advise residents the day before the event, and Chief Woods will have a patrol car in the area on the day of them, and this is the same as last year's event.
Thank you. Any questions? I'll start with Select Person Coughlin.
Nope, none at this time.
None.
Nope, same as last year.
Very smooth. All right. I would like to entertain a motion.
Yes, I move that the Select Board approve the road race application as presented.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? That carries 4-0-0. All right, now I'm grooving. I feel like I could do this every week.
Told you.
Ron's going to come back and he won't be chair anymore. Colin, you're up.
Thank you. Including your packet this evening is an explanation of the Northern Middlesex Council of Governments Economic Development District, EDD, application to the United States Department of Commerce. This application is a second attempt at the grant. In May of 2021, the Tyngsborough Select Board and Select Boards in all of the NIMCOG region communities voted to support the application. If successful, the U.S. Department of Commerce would designate the NIMCOG region, which includes Tyngsborough, as an economic development district, which would open the region up to specific grant programs focusing on economic development that we're not eligible for today. These grants cover the spectrum from technical assistance grants to infrastructure grants around public works and much more, all of it with the intent of spurring economic development growth in the entire region. As a part of their new application, each member community must reaffirm their support for the designation. If supported by this board tonight, we'd ask the acting chair to sign the letter of support that is included in your packet.
Thank you, sir. Any questions? I'm going to start on this side with Select Person Eldridge.
Okay. This, I mean, I think a lot of this connects in with, like, for example, Lowell has got the link around network of innovation and really trying to help foster high tech and a variety of other things. I think it's important for us to participate in this. I think that, you know, we've talked about it. Unfortunately, our residential tax base is such a high percentage of our overall tax base. That does not mean that we're going to go through and turn Tyngsborough into this high manufacturing and high commercial space. But I think if we do it smartly, we can look at tapping into some of the innovation and you know, medical and some of the things that we say really would work well along that Middlesex Road and some of the other areas. So I think NEMCOG has been a good partner in helping us navigate through some of those things and getting grants to help further those things, not to change the character of the town, but to really help the town evolve over the course of time so that we can tap into the good things that come with that type of economic development. So, I mean, I think that continuing down this path, I think, is the right way to go.
Thank you, sir. Select Person Cohen.
Sure. NIMCOG, for everybody who doesn't know, Northern Middlesex Council of Government, you know, they do a really good job of helping us with grants. And, you know, we've been very successful in getting grants. Some people take it for granted now that we receive over $2.5 million a year in grants. But it's a very long process. And with a lot of these grants, especially the ones they're looking at here, you have to have a documented plan. If you don't have a documented plan, then you're not going to get the grant. So it's a long process to, you know, have the plan. It doesn't necessarily lock us in like we have to do something. It just makes us, it gives us, once we have the plan, it allows us to be able to submit a grant application asking for what we feel that we need in Tyngsborough. So this is just the, you know, kind of the first step. And after that, it will allow us to be able to submit grants, or allow Colin to submit grants for us in the future. So I'm definitely agree with this, and it's a good step, and it allows us to hopefully, get some more very big grants.
Thank you. Select Person Coughlin.
Yeah, I think that you just answered my question. This is not gonna lock us into anything, right? So we would still have full control
Correct.
should this pass.
Correct. In fact, actually, Tyngsborough would never even be the entity applying for the grants. It would always be NIMCOG on behalf of the region. And, every grant has rules on how you spend the money, of course, but nothing about how Tyngsborough operates would influence our eligibility. It's simply being a member of an economic development district.
Okay. So there wouldn't be anything like, oh, this would be really good in Tyngsborough kind of thing.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
In fact, we are one of the smaller communities in the NIMCOG region. We benefit greatly from economic development. In Lowell, obviously, it trickles down into Tyngsborough. My guess is, particularly if this is approved in the beginning, you're going to see a lot of the grants focused on Lowell, maybe some in Chelmsford, right on the 495 area, which has benefits in terms of people coming to visit our restaurants. But yes, you won't see anything in Tyngsborough without first a vote of the select board. It would have to comply with the town's existing zoning bylaw. None of that would happen under this grant program.
Great, thank you.
Of course.
Thank you. I think I had similar questions just in terms of what does this mean for us besides access to additional grants? Like, are there any other benefits, and certainly are there any other requirements or standards that we need to uphold if we reach this status?
No, fortunately, because this is a regional grant, it isn't going to be member specific, and so there are none that I can think of on the federal level that say you must have adopted X, Y, or Z zoning, just to address the elephant in the room.
Mm-hmm.
What this will likely do is start with a planning type grant, which just makes the region as a whole more attractive to potential large economic development. Remember, this is strictly on economic development. This agency doesn't deal with housing, so we're not talking about planning grants to bring housing into Tyngsborough or any of the region. When we think about Tyngsborough's specific situation, and we've talked about this before, and when we do our goal setting, probably in July, we'll talk about it again, we've reached a point in our development where we have a few really large parcels left that we have been spending substantial time kind of marketing for warehouse type sites. You think 89 Kendall Road next to the DPW yard, right off the highway. This planning will help kind of make the region as a whole more attractive, which makes filling vacant commercial space like that much more attractive.
Great. Thank you so much. With that, I will entertain a motion.
Yes, Chairperson, I move that the Select Board support NIMCOG's Economic Development District application to the U.S. Department of Commerce.
Second.
Do we have any further discussion? Alrighty, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? That carries 4-0-0. And Mr. Loiseau?
Thank you. As I mentioned in my town manager's report last meeting, we opened bids 2 weeks ago for the abatement and demolition of the former Council on Aging building at 180 Lakeview Ave. As you may remember, that building has been unusable since a pipe burst 2.5 years ago now. The lowest bid that we received from a responsible and responsive bidder was $118,700. That came from S&R Corporation out of Lowell. They come highly recommended and recently completed a similar sized project in Drake-It, which they were very happy with. The low bid exceeds the amount of money that was set aside from this project. As a way of history, the project was first funded initially by a $24,800 allocation of ARPA funds from the Select Board that was intended to just cover the abatement. When I took over as town manager in September of 2023, I canceled what was then an open bid for the abatement work because I felt like we didn't have a thorough enough plan to move forward, and I didn't want us to just have a building that we tore the ceilings off of, the floors off of, and then we didn't have the money to actually demolish it. In October of 2023, town meeting approved a second allocation of $60,000 from free cash. That money was originally requested in May of 2023, but as we all remember, the funding wasn't available because free cash hadn't been certified in May of 2023. In total, the available project budget as of today is $84,800. Over the winter, when we revisited the project and reviewed applicable state regulations, we determined that prior to going out to bid, the town had to hire an abatement designer to identify and quantify the hazardous materials that needed to be abated. This work was not planned for or included in the original project design in spring of 2023. In order to move this forward, it has been on the list of goals for this board. I awarded a contract to Peer Consulting. They have familiarity in Tyngsborough. They did the abatement design at the First Parish Meeting House, the Winslow School, and most notably the middle school project. Their contract was valued at $13,500. Taking that into consideration, the project budget is $49,000 shy of the funds necessary to award the contract. Additionally, there are a few ancillary expenses that are outside of the scope of the contract that we'll need to cover. This includes the removal of an old oil tank in the basement, capping the sewer line at the street, and disposal of some non-hazardous materials in the building. Because that building had sat vacant since the Council on Aging moved out 10 years ago, we'll celebrate that on Friday, there's a lot of stuff in there that no longer really belongs to anybody that we didn't move and will need to be disposed of and can't just be put in the trash. So altogether, I expect that we'll be below this, but I'd be requesting an additional $70,000 to complete the work. This will allow us to complete those ancillary items, and, in full disclosure, when you do a demolition, although this is a small building, so our risks are much lower, there are generally some surprises that you don't plan for until the walls are completely down. I'm confident, our contractor is confident, and the designer is confident that reallocating $70,000 on top of the available budget today will get us to where we need to be to take the building down. We took all of our ARPA funding as lost revenue, so if you received less than $10 million in ARPA funding, you didn't have to go through the arduous process that larger communities with more money did, where you had to actually allocate every dollar to a specific project. That came with deadlines. The money had to be allocated to a project by December of 2024, and it has to be spent by December of 2026. Because we said back in the beginning when we first took this money, all $3.7 million is coming as lost revenue, that meant that we were able to essentially supplement the budget. And so that's how we've been spending it. This board has prioritized capital projects, namely. Because of that, we don't need to worry about the December 2024 deadline to allocate the money, because as far as the U.S. Treasury is concerned, it was allocated for lost revenue, and it's still being used as lost revenue. The DPW building was a project that was authorized through capital using ARPA funds for up to $450,000. The plan was that the Sewer Commission would match up to a third of the costs to build a prefab steel building that would house both our Highway Department and the Sewer Commission. We also received a $600,000 earmark, or were awarded a $600,000 earmark in the bond bill that the governor may include in her fiscal year 26 capital plan, though we've received no indication that that will happen. The other part of these bond bills is that the governor technically has 5 years to release it. So it could be in fiscal 26, it could be in fiscal 27, it could be at any point in the next 5 years, or it could be never at all. Tyngsborough has found its way into bond bills before, and the money was never released. So it's a bit of a guessing game. Because we haven't gotten final word on that $600,000, we haven't spent any of the $450,000. I think, in my professional opinion, it would be foolish for us to completely change our scope, spend the $450,000 on the off chance that we do find out that the $600,000 is available, and we could have gone for what we were looking for all along. So that said, my recommendation is to reallocate the $70,000, up to $70,000 from the DPW building project. Even if we were notified over the summer that the governor included that $600,000 in the capital plan, those funds likely wouldn't be available to us in the form of a contract with the state until September or October. If that's the case, and we needed any of this portion of money that we reallocated, a vote at town meeting in October could reallocate free cash to cover the difference. If we don't award the contract for the demolition and abatement of 180 Lakeview Ave today, the dollar amount that we got, the $118, will absolutely go up by at least $70,000. Our next highest bid was $46,000 above the $118. All the while, we have a building that can't be used, poses a public safety risk because we've now knocked down partial walls, we've ripped pieces of the siding off. So all things considered, I know I've thrown a lot of information at you, so I'll answer any questions you have. my opinion is that the best approach is to reallocate up to 70,000. Any money that we don't spend will just stay in the DPW project, but this will allow us to take the building down, remediate the hazardous materials, and then the DPW will pave over where the building was so that we have expanded parking for the softball fields, which are not touched as a part of this project. I said a lot, and so I'm happy to answer any questions that the board might have.
Yeah, let's open it up to questions. Select Person Coughlin.
Yeah, I think you just answered my question. You're planning on using that for softball field parking?
Correct.
So that's, okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And that was a commitment we made at town meeting, when town meeting approved the 60,000 for the demolition, was that we weren't touching the softball fields, and we would just put parking there so that the fields remain available to the public.
Great, thank you.
Of course.
And I'm happy to come back for another round of questions if you think of it. So, Select Person Cohen.
Well, this has been a long time in the making here, you know. Some of these buildings that we don't have use for, such as this one, especially since we have a new building for the same thing. You know, you look at these buildings, and some people look at buildings as an asset. And really what you should be doing is looking at this particular building as a liability. And, you know, when you start seeing these costs, I mean, if we would have done this 10 years ago, we probably could have done it at 25% of the cost, right? And so the longer we wait, as our town manager said, the more it's going to cost. And what we have seen in a lot of other projects is, you know, the state always changes the abatement. Oh, you know, you abated this, but oh, we changed our regulations now. Now there's more. Now you got to hire somebody else to go in there and to look at it to make sure that you still meet all the requirements for the abatement. So this is just something that I think we need to do. This, you know, this will lower our operational costs for the following years because we won't have to pay insurance and heating and everything else that we do, you know, there. And, you know, this will give a little bit more parking for the softball field, which will be good. And instead of an eyesore, we'll have a nice parking lot. So I think we absolutely need to do this, and I agree with the ARPA funding to make sure this happens. And, you know, the worst thing we could do is just do nothing, and then all of a sudden it's just going to cost us more down the road. That's it.
Thank you, sir. Select Person Eldridge.
Thank you. Yeah, and just for the folks who may not have seen it in the documentation, when we talk about the ARPA funding, that's purely under our control, under the select board. So it's very different. A lot of folks saying, why aren't we talking about this at town meeting? ARPA is under the select board's control. When I look at the DPW building and the 450 that was there, one of the things that I'm concerned about is, even if we get the grant and it goes in the bond bill and we get all those things to happen, as we've seen, costs keep going up. And it's likely that the longer this goes on, we're probably gonna have to figure out how we fund that anyway. And we might need to look at how, if it doesn't end up obviously in the governor's capital plan for fiscal 26, we might need to completely pivot on the rest of that, the 450, which would be the other 380, and see what we need to do to tap into that. I agree. I mean, I think the building serves no purpose. It's a detriment to us. It's a nice field there. I think it would be safer for people if it wasn't there. I worry that there are kids that are playing and, you know, thinking about the safety of them. I think this is the right way to go for now. And then let's see what the governor's plan is. We all know that we need the DPW building, and there's some things that we've got to do there, but I think this is the right thing to do right now, so I'm on board with it.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Manager, I had a couple questions. Could you, maybe at a high level, could you talk about what ARPA is and how that money came to be and what that stands for people that might be watching?
Absolutely. ARPA is the American Rescue Plan Act. It was funding approved back in 2020 that was designed to kind of revitalize, if you will, the national economy. It was federal money directed first to states, and then through the states directed to cities and towns. There was a very complicated formula. You got some of the money through the states, some kind of through the county. Middlesex County is defunct. It doesn't have a functioning government. So we were entitled to $3.7 million. ARPA as a funding mechanism and under the law had several categories you could spend the money on. One of them, and what we applied for or qualified for, was the lost revenue. And essentially it was a recognition of lost revenue, whether it's because people weren't out shopping, you weren't getting as much tax revenue. And so we used it in Tyngsborough quite wisely, I would argue, completely on capital expenses. Some bigger communities used it to create positions, and now they're all in the fiscal cliff trying to figure out how they maintain it since the funding is dwindling. And Mr. Eldridge is correct, that money specifically under the law went to the chief executives of a community. So in Tyngsborough's case, that's the select board, which is why much of the capital funding, even though it appeared for transparency purposes on our capital plan, the funding was actually approved at this level and not at town meeting.
Thank you, sir. And how much do we have remaining after this?
All of the money, with the exception of approximately 14 grand, is allocated. What we'll have to do over the summer is look back at some of those projects to see where there's money that won't be spent. We've done a lot of shifting around in the last 8 months, I would say, to cover other areas. So we will fully spend every penny of that 3.7 million. And again, 100% of it was spent on capital projects, not on positions.
Perfect. And Select Person Cohen mentioned the operational savings that we'll be able to experience. Do you have a sense of how much this building is costing us now in operations?
Yes, water was already cut off to the building after the pipe burst, so we're not paying anything on municipal water. We're probably spending, I would say, less than $1,000 a year on electricity. Our insurance policy is much more expensive now that the building is truly a liability, so I would imagine if we were to renew this for fiscal year 26, which we have not yet, in anticipation that we'll take it down, we'd probably be looking at $7,000 to $8,000 simply because of the liability risks that it poses. And then you've got all the, we recently cut off sewer, so we're not paying that anymore. You've got ancillary expenses with fixing the broken windows when they get broken because nobody's in there and nobody can keep up with it.
Thank you, sir. All right. Any further discussion? I want to go back to Select Person Coughlin just in case.
Just, were there any past deliberations around in this building about selling it?
I believe there was. I was not the town manager at the time. One of the most constraining factors would be the zoning. It's in a residential zone, so if you were to sell it, it would have to be a residential unit. Another compelling issue is that the parcel itself isn't subdivided. So part of the parcel is the parking lot that goes toward Lakeview General and Olympic Pizza, but the most important part is the softball field. And if we tried to subdivide just the building from the softball field, we'd have a non-conforming lot. And so you wouldn't actually be able to build anything there unless you got rid of the softball field.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
That's a great question. All right. I would entertain a motion.
Yes, Chairperson, I move that the Select Board authorize the reallocation of up to $70,000 from the DPW building project to the demo of 180 Lakeview Ave.
Second.
Any further discussion? All right. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? That carries 4-0-0. And last up on new business, Mr. Loisel.
Thank you, Chairperson Gilfis. This is not a thing I'm looking for a decision on. This is very early on in the process, and I've talked to some of you about it, but I wanted to have a broader discussion before we get too into the weeds. As you're aware, and we've talked about, we celebrated the grand opening of Ironwood Park last week. Among the many amenities, there are 6 pickleball courts, all of which are already proving to be in high demand. We've talked at a prior meeting about the logistics of the park, and just to level with everybody, our recreation department remains 1 full-time employee. That person's office is out of this building. The budget doesn't support adding a new person in the recreation department, though I'd like to get to a point where we have like seasonal help to help cover it. We haven't removed any responsibilities from this person, though we've put control of the park technically under the recreation committee. So we've been having a lot of conversations with the rec department, with staff on our end, DPW, as well as peers in our communities. Pickleball is a very popular thing right now, so it's something that I can talk about with many managers because they've got it. And so one of the things we need to plan for is managing the courts, maintaining the courts. When you look at the other amenities, they're all getting used, but not to the same degree that you're seeing at on the pickleball courts. So one of the approaches that I encountered in other communities that I think would work well in Tyngsborough is entering into an agreement with a nonprofit like Friends of Tyngsborough Pickleball. That would reserve the right for the town to ultimately control the courts. Of course, I'm not suggesting that this board give up control of land that's owned by the town, but it would grant the Friends permission to manage certain aspects like scheduling the courts that are reserved for competitive play. Some groups sell memberships, that's how they fundraise, although we could figure out how that works. And all the money that they collect would be directed toward future maintenance of the court. So this concept isn't new in Tyngsborough. We have a Friends of the Tyngsborough Public Library who work in conjunction with the Board of Library Trustees. They have members, they do fundraising events, the book sale is the big one, and all of their money by their organization's charter goes to the Tyngsborough Public Library. Same thing at the Council on Aging. There are two different Friends groups that fundraise specifically for the purpose of benefiting the Friends. And many communities have Friends of the Town Police Department, Friends of the Fire Department. So this isn't a new concept that we would be piloting here. We would just be applying it to a different purpose. The other thing is that fundraising on a municipal level is far more challenging than if you're a nonprofit set up like a Friends. There are mechanisms by which we can accept certain donations, but generally speaking, fundraising is a little bit more difficult if you're a municipality. Our Assistant Town Manager, Sean Walsh, has put together a pretty comprehensive list of the requirements for a group to form a nonprofit, and I'm sure that we will have no problem recruiting an initial cohort, which I will recommend includes a member of the Recreation Committee and perhaps a designee of this board. Again, I don't need decisions tonight, but before we dive too deep, we want some perspective from the board. In the meantime, I'd like to get working on a potential agreement between the town and a Friends group, but before I spend too much of our time and town council's time on that, I really just wanted to make sure that there was a general support from the board for this type of arrangement. I've talked to our rec director and DPW superintendent, and we're in agreement that this approach makes sense for these courts. So again, I don't need a vote from the board tonight, but I would just be looking for general feedback. I know I haven't given you much details because we haven't really dived too deep until we know you're interested. But the bottom line is it would be a nonprofit. It would have representation from the town. They would their sole mission would be maintaining and preserving the pickleball courts. Remember that CPC funds can't be used for maintenance, so CPC funded the park, but now to maintain them, we can't go back to CPC. So it either has to become a capital item, a recurring budget item, or we do it through some form of fundraising. And in any type of agreement, the select board, as the authority with land in Tyngsborough, would retain complete control at any time. Our rec department would still be able to schedule programming that they want. I know they're doing some lessons over there. But with that, I'm opening up to feedback. And, you know, if anybody on the board is like, no, this sounds like a terrible idea and the board doesn't have a consensus, we won't go any further. But I thought it was worth exploring with the board.
Thank you, sir. This is so far outside of my area of expertise that I'm going to turn it right over to Select Person Cohen to kick us off.
Okay. Yeah, so I've been talking to a few people that actually take care of their pickleball courts in other communities. And there's a whole bunch of variety of topics that always come up, right? So what they have done is that they do have some type of either committee or designate somebody to actually do the scheduling, which does help out. And that person, like in Drake-it, you know, he will, you know, although it has here for maintenance, one of the things that he does is for upgrades also, he would just, actually what he would do, he just put out a tin can and said donations for X, and he'd, you know, and basically he would do some upgrades on some things that were needed, you know, at the park. So although you have only maintenance here, I think maintenance, upgrades, you know, whatever that the courts may need or whatever it would take to continue having pickleball there. You know, they also have balls, and, you know, they throw out another thing. You know, we just bought another, you know, 20 balls, you know, and everybody throws in a buck or something. It's nice and easy. So there's different ways of doing that. But I think it is really important that, you know, somebody that plays there all the time, we don't want to, you know, if Allison has to manage this and she doesn't play pickleball and she's not there all the time, it's going to be really hard. And there's really no need for that because, you know, when you play, there really isn't that many issues. It's really just a matter of somebody that really knows the rules of how things go. And I just think this type of committee would be a good thing, but I think we do need to look at, a lot of the details of this. One of the things you have here is for competitive play. And if you really look at it, if you look at the scheduling, Sign Up Genius, it's competitive play and open play. I think you mean both, but according to this, what you have here would only be competitive play, right? I think opening the courts would be good, and, just to this particular committee. And then there's a lot of questions about, if we have lessons and whatever, does the rec committee still do that, and how that works. The other way Drake does it too is so the recreation director does have an idea of what's going on. They go to the recreation director and say, I want these particular courts to have all player, we'll call it, right? And I want them for these particular timeframes. So then if, the recreation director wants to have a particular event, she could do that. But that negotiation or whatever really does need to be defined in this. The other thing when I look at this that I don't like is it says sell memberships. I mean, I take this park as it's open to everybody. Nobody pays anything to use the park. And when I see memberships, I'm thinking like you have to almost pay to play. So we'll have to figure that out. But I wouldn't agree that anybody has to pay to use the park. And if sometime in the future somebody determines you do have to pay to play, I guess we'll call it, I think that should stay on the select board, and the select board should decide that. So that shouldn't be in here. But I do think overall it's something, as you said, there's a lot more details to be hashed out. I think it's a good idea, and it would take a lot of stress and, management off of our recreation director. And there's really no need for her to have to go through all that at this point.
Yeah, please.
Mr. Cohen is totally correct. At no point would we even be able to restrict the courts to pay for because we use CPC funds. The membership, and I didn't word it all that well here, but it will be clear so Chatham, for instance, they sell memberships, and all that means is that like twice a year they do tournaments for the friends. There has to be some draw for the group to want to fundraise and spend money. So while right now we reserve 4 courts for open play and 2 for open play and 4 for competitive, the ones that are reserved for open play would always be reserved for open play. There are periods of times within the agreement with Chatham that the Friends of Chatham Pickleball host tournaments that are exclusively for their members. That's what you're buying membership into. Mr. Cohen is correct. We could never restrict the use of these to people who pay money.
Thank you. Select Person Coughlin.
So I know enough about pickleball to be dangerous, and no, really, I do. And I feel like on the face of it, it sounds like a really good idea for maintenance and to keep up and stuff. And it is kind of a growing sport from everything that I'm hearing. So I think it would be good to entertain proceeding with this. But I guess my concern would be that we wouldn't want it to be burdensome on the regular citizens, of Tyngsborough, who may feel like they don't have any control because there's a friends group. And maybe it wouldn't be like that at all. And maybe it would just be a seamless, membership. But that would be my only consideration. And then it would just be for pickleball. So we wouldn't have like a Friends of, the horseshoe pit. Like, do you know what I mean? Like there wouldn't be, it's just for the pickleball and the maintenance there.
Yes, currently, I mean, there could be a Friends of Ironwood Park down the road. I think one of the things that is abundantly clear is that pickleball is much more popular than any of the amenities that we have. It's the only one where we allow people to schedule times to play. And in that system, it's just not sustainable for staff to do it. And of course, there's always the option to just have a volunteer. The problem with volunteers, if it's not a formal program, is they all have lives, and we can't be angry at them if something comes up and they didn't do it. And then how do you decide who gets to make those decisions? So the Friends is general idea that I think might be a good test run on the pickleball courts, but you're totally correct. I mean, we could get to a point where that park is so popular that a Friends of Ironwood Park, kind of like the Friends of the Trustee or the Trustees group that manages open space in Massachusetts. But you're right, we would have to be very careful that the creation of a group doesn't cause non-members to feel like they're not welcome
Right.
at the courts.
Thank you.
Select Person Eldridge.
Yeah, so at the opening, and even before, I think that there were a lot of concerns about how is this gonna be managed, and how are logistics gonna work? And I think a lot of it was around pickleball, because that's probably the tightest scheduling. We only have 6 courts, so we're somewhat limited. You know, one of the things that I think should be part of this is advocacy for maybe, and fundraising for more courts. As much as I would love to have CPC pay for it, if there are things where people would like to do more, fantastic. But I think that I'd love to see the details. I think we should proceed. I think that there's a lot of things that need to be figured out. I think that many of the items that have been raised here are saying, look, I don't want to have to charge memberships. The taxpayers paid for this. And so we don't want to have any of the taxpayers feel like they don't have access to these things. However, we do need to make sure that things are maintained. I look at at Bicentennial, right? We've got the fields that are there. The maintenance of those fields, whether it's the dogs and picking up the poop, and the basketball nets that are ripped down, and some of the things that are there. Ultimately, these things need to be maintained, and CPC doesn't cover those. So I think we need to figure out how that is there. And if we can get volunteers who are willing to help shape that, we're not talking about abdicating our responsibilities and our authority over those things, but to help and give some suggestions and some ideas, I'm for that. I'd like to see what the details are going to be so that we make sure that we get all the positives, but we avoid some of those potential unintended consequences. So I think I'm glad that it was brought forward as a possibility, and I'm intrigued to see what the details might look like.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, I think I share the enthusiasm to explore this more. I think there's a lot of questions about logistics. You know, I try to imagine myself, I don't imagine myself going to the pickleball court, but if I were to imagine myself going to the pickleball court, I'm curious, like, if someone just walks up, do they understand that in 5 minutes someone may be scheduled to use it? Like, is that, I mean, that might be just sort of like the rules of the road. Like, maybe that's something that pickleballers know more than I do. But, you know, something like that, like understanding how you experience it from start to finish. Do you know to open up the sign-up sheet? You know, who's maintaining the sign-up sheet? When the links break, who deals with that? You know, that's something that we had talked about. So certainly logistics I would like to hear more about. It sounds like we have some good examples about Drake-It and Chatham, and there's communities that are doing this, so we can learn from them. Also, to Select Person Eldridge's point, I'm curious about how other communities our size are managing open space in general. I've been really interested in the conversations that Chelmsford is having about their open space, and the volunteer groups that are doing that work versus the groups that are a part of the municipality. And there's actually a little bit of tension there right now, if anyone's been reading on the Sun. So, you know, I'm curious how communities generally do that and what our experience is, and if it's time for us to, I can imagine that maybe we're at a maturity level now where it's worth thinking about that. So, yeah. And you don't need anything from us. This is no
Nobody
vote.
here said they were totally opposed, so what we'll do is we'll work with town council and other communities that have agreements in place to circulate a draft before your July 7th meeting. I won't ask you to vote on anything at your July 7th meeting, but we can get some feedback and spend the next few weeks kind of piling something up that addresses some of these concerns. But we will dig deeper now and explore how it will look.
Thank you, sir. All right, that is it for new business. So it's time for select board reports. I'm going to start on my right-hand side.
Oh, starting with me.
Keep you on your toes.
Thank you, Chairperson. I guess piggybacking off something that Colin had talked about in his town manager's report, there was a major accident that we had on Route 3, and I want to go a little bit further when we talk about what our first responders do. I think one of the things that people look at is the equipment and how quickly they respond, and they take it through the event, and I think that that's critical for residents. But I also think that people should understand what the first responders go through. So when you respond to some of these scenes, and I can't fathom it, by the way, but I always ask. I was talking to the fire folks afterwards, and how is everybody doing? Because these things are, it's a very difficult thing, and I think it's important for people to understand what they have to go through during those things, but also that both police and fire, they have support services that are provided that I think are fantastic. I also think that they work with each other to make sure that they talk about some of these things, because it can be very difficult. But I think it's important for people to understand that there's a lot more that goes into being a first responder than just having the right equipment and being trained and doing all those things. There's a huge mental health component to it that I think we need to be aware of and help support and continue to help support, because I worry that when we think of what programs might be cut, and there are things that have been added recently around some of these mental health options that I worry that we might minimize them. And I think it's important for people to understand that these are really important things. So I just wanted to raise that particular issue. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Cohen.
I think I'll continue on Ironwood Park. As our town manager said, we believe this is a gem of this community. If you have not seen it, please stop by. Please stop in. You can use whatever amenities is there. It's always open from, I guess, 8 a.m. to sunset, or sunrise to sunset. I'm not really sure which at this point. So I've seen one thing that says 8 a.m. and I thought it was sunrise, but we'll figure that out. Even before the amenities were open, at one point I saw 8 cars there, and it's about a mile walkway. So you can walk around it. It is on the Tyngsborough Golf Course. I think everybody knows where that is, on Sherburne Ave. Any of the amenities there you can use at any time, even pickleball. There's always an open court where anybody can just stop in at any time. And I've seen a lot of people with their kids stop in and play pickleball, basketball, volleyball. There's a lot to do there. There's a big open field where you can play whatever you like. So, if you haven't seen it, it's a gem of Tyngsborough. Please stop in, take a look at it. I've stopped in many times, talked to a lot of residents, and they're absolutely thrilled that this is here. It's being used. I saw a couple of people in the maintenance crew, come in and take the garbage out for the weekend, and they were just like, they couldn't believe the number of people that were there this morning. So it is being used all the time, and please stop in, and please use the amenities that are there. They're there for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Select Person Coughlin.
Yeah, so this past Friday, I had the opportunity to attend the MMA training for new select people, and there were 97 of us. It was very well represented, but and I sat at a table with some lovely people from 5 other communities. And other than one from Plymouth, they have a different structure because they're just really large and that. Everybody else kind of has the same type of thing that I'm hearing here. Lack of participation from the citizenry. People, there's like apathy, and people only really show up when something's very important, like a new school or, firehouse or something. And I think people struggle with trying to get folks to the table, right? Because then they hear, well, you know, all these complaints at the same time. So I guess we're in good standing, you know, with that. But it was a great opportunity, and I really enjoyed it and did learn a lot, so.
Thank you. For me, I brought a prop. So, George, if I can ask you to zoom in for my select board report. I attended, thank you, yeah. I just want to share, I love this little stress ball. It's a little poop, and it says the Tyngsborough Sewer Department, and it's a little manhole cover. And I think that this is the cutest piece of swag that I have ever received. During the Ironwood Park Health and Safety Fair extravaganza, Kathy from the sewer department was giving these out and was doing a presentation about what is supposed to go in your toilet and what should not, and telling kids about not putting toys and things in their toilets. And I don't think I've experienced this much joy in a long time. And so I just, like, it is the simplest, stupidest thing, but having a Tyngsborough Public Works Sewer Department branded little squeeze poop really fired me up. So in all seriousness, I say this because I think that there is apathy, and it's very easy to just go through the motions of, like, we're running a town, you know, it's boring. It's not. Like, this could be fun. It's awesome. I'm really proud of the work that we get to do. The people that work in this town are clever and thoughtful and care about things that maybe others wouldn't think are important. So thank you to Kathy, to the sewer division, to everyone that was out at the Health and Safety Fair. Had a blast. So I thank everyone for being patient with me while I pretended to be a chair for this meeting. I look forward to doing it again in 3 weeks when we have our next meeting. Our next meeting is going to be Monday, July 7th. I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of June. Happy Pride Month. I hope that everyone has a wonderful, safe, happy 4th of July. I'll be celebrating my 10th wedding anniversary. Eric will be celebrating his 30th birthday. And
A little bit off.
little off. And that's it. We don't have executive session. So if no one else has any, go ahead. Yeah, please.
No, I was going to make a motion.
Oh, let's make a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained. We are out. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
See you in 3
everybody.
weeks.